Before the music even starts, Zlayia stands at the altar, trembling. Ariko's eyes are locked on hers, unaware of the storm waiting behind the corridor doors. The wedding was going perfectly. Everyone was smiling, clapping, and waiting for the speeches. Zlayia stood beside Ariko, holding his hand, feeling like the happiest bride in the world. But then, her mother, Lindiwe, stood up. She tapped her glass lightly, and the room slowly quieted down. Everyone turned to her, expecting a sweet toast. Instead, she said something no one expected. "Zlayia isn't my birth daughter." Her voice echoed through the hall like thunder. There was silence, then sharp gasps. Some people dropped their glasses. Others turned to each other in shock. Zlayia felt her breath catch in her chest. Her smile faded. Her heart was pounding. Why would her mother say this now, in front of everyone? What was she trying to do? Zlaya's legs felt weak, but she stood still. Her hand trembled in Ariko's, and he looked at her, confused and worried. All eyes were on her. Her world had just cracked open. But then, she felt something, a presence. Someone was standing behind her, rising slowly. She didn't turn to look, but she felt it. Someone else had something to say. 2 years before the wedding, everything changed for Zlayia. She had always wondered why she felt so different, like a piece of her past was missing. One day, with shaky hands and a heart full of fear, she traveled to a quiet mansion far from where she grew up. She had nothing but a small, worn-out baby blanket in her bag. It was old, torn in one corner, but stitched with a gold emblem, something that always made her wonder if it meant more than just decoration. She stood at the tall door and rang the bell. A man opened it. He looked powerful, important, but something in his eyes softened the moment he saw her. That man was Mr. Chijioke. He had never met her before, but the moment his eyes landed on the emblem, his face changed. He knew. Zlayia was his daughter, his long-lost child from a love he had lost many years ago, a child he thought was gone forever. They didn't hug, they didn't cry, but they sat, they talked, and something inside Zlayia clicked. A part of her heart that always felt empty began to fill. He never asked her to leave her life behind. He just gave her answers, peace, and a promise. "You will always have a place with me." Back at home, her adoptive mother, Lindiwe, had sensed something. One night, while Zlayia was asleep, she searched through her things and found the blanket. Her eyes locked on the gold emblem. Her face turned pale. She knew exactly what it was. Years ago, when she had taken baby Zlayia in, left on a church doorstep with nothing but that blanket, she had seen the emblem too. But she never told Zlayia. She had hidden it away, afraid that one day someone would come take her daughter back, that she would lose the child she loved like her own. So when Zlayia returned from her visit with Mr. Chijioke, she never told Lindiwe what happened. She simply folded the blanket, hid it deeper in her drawer, and carried on. But inside, she had changed. She now knew where she came from. And even though Lindiwe had lied, had hidden her truth, Zlayia couldn't hate her. After all, she had raised her, fed her, loved her through every moment of life. But the truth had started to grow like a seed in the dark. And Zlayia knew, someday, it would come into the light. The room was still full of gasps and murmurs. Everyone was whispering, unsure of what they had just heard. But right in the middle of it all, Ariko gently squeezed Zlayia's hand. His eyes searched her face, trying to understand what was happening. His eyebrows pulled together, clearly confused. This was supposed to be their happiest day. Why would her mother choose now, of all moments, to say something like that? Zlayia didn't speak right away. She took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast, but her face stayed calm. She could feel Ariko's eyes on her, full of concern. He didn't know the full story, only small pieces she had shared with him, and she had hoped that this part of her life would never be dragged into this special day. She looked at Ariko briefly and gave a small nod, as if to say, "I'm okay." Then she turned slowly to face her mother. Everyone was watching. Zlayia stood taller. She didn't shake. She didn't cry. She just looked straight at her mother with strong, steady eyes. Her voice was soft but clear. "Go on," she said. That one sentence was louder than all the whispers in the room. It wasn't just permission. It was a challenge. If her mother wanted to reveal the truth, fine. But Zlayia would not be broken. She wouldn't run away or hide. Not today. Ariko glanced between them, still unsure of what was happening. But when he saw Zlayia's strength, how she held herself like nothing could knock her down, he felt something shift inside him. He didn't understand everything, But he knew one thing for sure. This woman beside him was brave. Brave in a way most people couldn't be. The guests didn't know what to do. Some sat frozen, holding their drinks. Others leaned forward, waiting to hear what would happen next. But Zlayia didn't care about the whispers, the looks, or the gossip that might follow. She had made her choice in that moment, to stand in the light, not in shame. Ariko's grip on her hand tightened just a bit. She felt it, and that silent support gave her even more courage. She didn't look away from her mother. Her eyes said everything. You tried to shake me, but I'm still standing. In that moment, Zlayia was no longer just a bride. She was a woman standing in her truth, unafraid of the past, unafraid of judgment. Her voice may have been calm, but her spirit was louder than ever, and everyone in that room felt it. As the tension in the hall grew, all eyes were still on Zlayia and her mother. But then, something shifted in the crowd. Heads slowly began to turn. A quiet rustle moved through the guests, like a soft wind brushing across a field. At the very back of the room, standing tall and still, was a man no one had noticed before. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't whispering like the others. He just stood there, calm, composed, and watching everything with careful eyes. He wore a simple but expensive-looking suit, and even though he didn't say a word, his presence filled the room. Some guests began to whisper, "Who is that?" Others narrowed their eyes, trying to remember where they'd seen him before. His face looked familiar, but not from weddings or parties. He was the kind of man people read about in magazines or see in news articles. A powerful figure, a quiet one, but unforgettable. It was Mr. Chijioke, the billionaire, the man known across the country for his huge donations, secret gifts, and helping the poor without ever asking for attention. Most people had only heard of him. Few had ever seen him in real life. No one expected him to show up at this wedding. No one even knew he was connected to Zlayia, but there he was. And even though he didn't speak, his silence said everything. Zlayia felt his presence before she saw him. Something inside her told her to turn. When she did, her breath caught in her throat. Their eyes met across the room. It had been months since she last saw him, and yet in that moment, it felt like no time had passed. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked at her with steady, fatherly eyes. Eyes that carried stories, sorrow and pride, and that was enough. Zlayya's heart steadied. His silent support gave her strength. She knew he hadn't come to make a scene. He came because he loved her, because he wanted to stand by her, even if no one else would. The guests, still stunned, whispered among themselves, but no one dared approach him. His energy was calm, but strong. It was the kind of presence that demanded respect, without saying a word. Ariko noticed him too. He leaned towards Zlayia and asked quietly, "Do you know him?" Zlayia didn't look away from Mr. Chijioke. Her lips barely moved as she whispered back, "Yes, that's my real father." And just like that, the truth began to unfold. Not with shouting, not with drama, but with quiet power. The room, once full of happiness and celebration, suddenly turned into chaos. People who were just laughing minutes ago were now whispering quickly among themselves. Some guests stood from their chairs, craning their necks to get a better look at Zlayia, her mother, and the stranger in the back. Others were frozen in shock, their mouths open, trying to understand what had just happened. Questions floated in the air like buzzing bees. Did she just say adopted? Who's that man at the back? Why now? On her wedding day, the whispers grew louder. A few phones were already in hands, ready to record or text others. Confusion spread like fire, lighting up every row. Some guests looked at Ariko, waiting to see if he would walk away or stay. A few even whispered that the wedding might be off. Zlayia stood still, her face calm, but her heart pounding hard. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room. This moment, which was meant to be filled with joy, was turning into something else. But she didn't move. She didn't cry. She stayed firm, as if holding everything inside her together. Then, Ariko stepped forward, not away from her, but closer. He placed one hand on her back and leaned in, his voice soft but full of strength. "Don't let her ruin this day." Those words, so simple, hit her heart like warmth in the middle of a storm. Zlayia looked at him. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't confused anymore. He was with her. He knew this day wasn't about secrets or the past. It was about their future. As more people started talking and asking questions, Ariko turned slightly. giving them all a look that said, enough. His calm but firm stance told everyone that this wedding was not falling apart. Not today. Some people quieted down, others still whispered, but the energy began to shift again. Zlayia straightened her shoulders. The storm around her didn't matter. Her dress, her vows, her love, none of it was broken. She was still standing, and Ariko was right beside her. She glanced at her mother, who looked shaken now, not proud, and she glanced once more at Mr. Chijioke, who gave a small nod of support from the back. This day had taken a turn no one expected, but it wasn't over, not even close. And no matter what happened next, Zlayia knew she wouldn't let anyone take this moment from her. Not the whispers, not the judgment, and not the truth coming to light. With Ariko's hand in hers, and her heart steady again, she was ready to move forward. The air in the chapel was still tense. Some guests had stopped whispering, others were still turning to each other in confusion, waiting to see what Zlayia would do next. But in the middle of all the noise, she stood calm, like the eye of a storm. Her heart was beating fast, but her face showed no fear. She had spent her whole life trying to understand who she really was. And now, on the biggest day of her life, that question had been thrown in front of everyone. Zlayia didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she looked around the room slowly, at her mother, at Mr. Chijioke, at the people she thought she knew, and at the ones who were now silently judging her. And then she looked at Ariko, who gave her a small, steady nod that said, "You've got this." The priest asked if she had prepared any vows. Zlayia stepped forward. She didn't pull out a paper. She didn't need to. Her words were already inside her. She looked up and began speaking, softly but clearly, her voice floating above the silence. "I am who I choose to be." That was it. Just one sentence. But it was more powerful than a long speech. She didn't talk about being adopted. She didn't explain her past or defend herself. She didn't have to. Everyone in the room understood what she meant. She was saying, "I am not defined by secrets, not by pain, not by what people say or reveal. I am not ashamed of where I came from, but I will not be held back by it." Her words settled over the guests like a warm breeze. A few people lowered their eyes, feeling ashamed for whispering. Others nodded, silently touched by her strength. Some even teared up. Mr. Chijioke smiled from the back of the room. He had seen strength in many forms during his life, but this moment, this quiet courage, was something special. Lindiwe, her adoptive mother, looked down at her hands, clearly moved even if she couldn't say a word. And Ariko, he just stared at her like he was falling in love with her all over again. Zlayia stepped back gently, her vow complete. There was no applause, no loud cheering, but there was a new kind of silence, a deep, respectful one, the kind that follows truth. In just 7 words, she had said everything that needed to be said. She had turned pain into power, confusion into clarity. She hadn't lost her voice. She had found it. And from that moment on, no matter what anyone believed or thought, Zlayia had made it clear. This was her story now, and she would live it on her terms. The room had just settled into a quiet stillness after Zlayya's short but powerful vow. But then, from the back of the room, footsteps began to echo softly. Everyone turned their heads again. The tall man who had been silent this whole time was now walking toward the front. It was Mr. Chijioke. He reached the microphone calmly. He didn't need to shout or ask for attention. He already had it. The entire room held its breath. He paused, looking gently at Zlayia, then back at the crowd. "My name is Chijioke," he began, his voice deep and steady. "Some of you know me from business. Many don't know me at all. But today, I'm not here as a businessman. I'm here as a father." Gasps spread again. People leaned in closer. He looked at Zlayia with soft eyes. "Many years ago, I lost someone very dear to me," he said. "The love of my life, and the daughter we never got to raise together. Life separated us. Time stole moments. But fate brought her back to me." Zlayya's eyes welled with tears, but she held them in. Her hand clutched Ariko's tightly. "I didn't raise her," Mr. Chijioke continued. "I didn't get to hold her when she cried or walk her to school. But the day she stood at my door with a small, torn blanket, I knew my daughter had found her way home." The room stayed silent. No phones, no whispers, just hearts listening. She didn't come asking for money. She didn't want anything from me. All she wanted was to know who she was. And in that moment, I saw strength, kindness, and dignity. not just from my blood, but from the love that raised her. He looked over to Lindiwe now, and for a brief moment there was no anger in his face, only understanding. Her adoptive mother did what she thought was right. I cannot judge that, but today I won't let shame cover the truth. He took a slow breath, then added gently, before her birth mother passed away, her final words were, "Let her live, loved." That was her only wish. Mr. Chijioke turned fully to Zlayia now. "And you have done just that, my daughter. You've lived with grace. You've loved without fear. And today, I don't just see a bride. I see the woman your mother prayed you'd become." Zlayia wiped a quiet tear from her cheek. Mr. Chijioke nodded once, stepped back from the microphone, and returned to his place at the back. He had said what needed to be said, and no one could forget it. As Mr. Chijioke stepped back from the microphone, the room stayed quiet. Everyone was still trying to take in what he had just said. All eyes slowly turned to Lindiwe. She was sitting alone, her hands shaking in her lap. Her eyes were full of emotion, and then suddenly the tears came. She covered her mouth as she began to cry. Her shoulders shook. The truth had been spoken out loud, and now there was nothing left to hide behind. She stood up slowly, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "I raised her as my own. I loved her, but I was scared." Some people looked away, unsure how to feel. Others stared at her, waiting for more. "I was afraid people would look at her differently," Lindiwe continued. "I was afraid they'd judge me, and her. I thought I was protecting us." She looked at Zlayia now, her tears falling freely. "I should have told you the truth. I should have trusted you to handle it, but I didn't. I lied, not because I didn't love you, but because I was weak." Zlayia listened quietly. Her face was calm, and her heart was full of so many feelings: hurt, sadness, but also understanding. She took a small step toward her mother. The whole room watched, unsure of what would happen next. Then Zlayia said something that made everyone freeze. "Your fear never stole my worth." Her voice was gentle, but it carried through the room like a strong wind. Lindiwe's lips trembled. She looked at her daughter with eyes full of pain and hope at the same time. Zlayia continued, "Yes, you kept the truth from me. Yes, you were afraid, but I still became who I was meant to be. I still found love. I still found my voice." The room was completely silent. Even the soft music had stopped playing in the background. "I forgive you," Zlayia said, "not because everything you did was right, but because I choose peace. I choose to move forward." Lindiwe broke down, her hands covering her face as more tears flowed. Zlayia stepped closer and gently reached out, placing her hand on her mother's shoulder. It wasn't a grand hug or a big show. It was quiet, and it was enough. Everyone in the room felt something shift. This wasn't a moment of revenge. It was a moment of healing, of grace. And in that moment, it wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about the choice to forgive and to love anyway. After all the truth had been spoken and the room began to settle, Ariko looked at Zlayia with eyes full of love and admiration. He had seen her strength, her courage, and her grace. She had stood tall through it all, through secrets, surprises, and emotions, and never once backed down. In that moment, he didn't just see the woman he was marrying. He saw the woman he would spend the rest of his life learning from, growing with, and standing beside. He gently took her hand and looked down at the ring already on her finger. Slowly, he adjusted it, making sure it was sitting just right, almost like he was placing it again, with even more meaning than before. He leaned in close, his voice soft and filled with emotion, and whispered, "Nothing can break us now." Zlayia felt her heart swell. After everything they had just been through in front of everyone, after all the doubts that could have shaken their day, those words meant more than anything. They weren't just a promise, they were a reminder that love, when it's real, stands strong, even in the hardest moments. Ariko smiled at her, not the nervous smile he had earlier, but a deeper, warmer one. The kind of smile that says, "I see you, I choose you, I'm here for all of it." And Zlayia smiled back, her eyes shining. The two of them turned to face the crowd together, not as a couple holding on to a perfect day, but as a team who had already faced something real, and still chose to keep walking forward, hand in hand. Guests wiped away tears. A few clapped gently, feeling moved by the quiet strength between them. There were no big speeches, no loud music playing yet, just the soft feeling in the air that something powerful had just happened. Zlayia and Ariko didn't need to say more. The way they stood beside each other said everything. They were no longer just bride and groom. They were partners, and together they were unshaken. From that moment, the day was no longer just about a wedding. It was about two people choosing love, even when life got messy, choosing each other, even when the past tried to interrupt, and standing tall, even when everything could have fallen apart. That small moment, with a ring adjustment and a quiet vow, became the heart of their story. Simple, strong, unbreakable. The soft hum of the guests returned, but this time it felt different, warmer, more meaningful. The ceremony, once shaken by surprise and secrets, now felt even more real, like something deeper had been added to it. There was no rush, no noise, just quiet smiles, gentle nods, and a feeling that something special had just been witnessed. The priest cleared his throat softly, then continued with the final part of the ceremony. Zlayia and Ariko stood beneath the wedding arch, hand in hand, eyes locked. The arch, decorated with white flowers and soft golden ribbons, seemed to glow in the evening light. The sun outside was beginning to set, casting a beautiful orange-pink glow through the windows. Everyone was watching, but no one reached for their phones. There were no flashes, no live streams, no distractions, just eyes filled with emotion. A few guests wiped tears from their cheeks. Others simply smiled, holding hands with their own loved ones, touched by the power of love and truth. As the priest gave them the final blessing, Zlayia and Ariko leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, tender kiss. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was gentle and full of everything they had just been through. A kiss that said, "We made it." A kiss that closed one chapter and opened another. At the back of the room, Mr. Chijioke stood quietly, a proud smile on his face. He didn't need to say anything more. Just watching his daughter, now a strong, beautiful bride, was enough. His eyes sparkled as he clapped softly, his heart full. Lindiwe, standing off to the side, looked on with a mixture of tears and relief. She had lost control of the secret, but she hadn't lost her daughter's love. That meant everything. The guests rose to their feet, clapping gently, some still with damp cheeks. The mood had shifted, not just back to celebration, but to something even deeper, something honest. As Zlayia and Ariko walked down the aisle together, side by side, the setting sun lit up their path. It wasn't just a walk toward the reception. It was a walk into a new life, one built on truth, love, and quiet strength, and no one needed to film it. Because sometimes, the best moments aren't meant for the internet. They're meant for the heart. And in that soft, golden glow, Zlayia and Ariko began their forever, with no spotlight, no filters, just love. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll without sharing it. Tag someone who believes that love, truth, and forgiveness are stronger than any secret. Drop a dove if you believe real love always finds the light.